All right, so we're going to talk about making a mask that has a side closure. But before we begin, I wanted to talk about, well, first the pattern. You're going to have 4 pieces in this mask design. Basically, the layout and the pattern is A, B, C, D. But before we begin, I wanted to talk to you about what fabric you're going to use. This is not a time to use stretchy lace fabric. So basically what, in terms of density, you want a tight woven that basically will filter as much as possible. So in my case, I do have batik, which is it's based in Malaysia, or this is a Ghana-based cotton. And another option is quilter's cotton. I have silk here. Old t-shirts with a woven, tight woven. Basically you want high density woven. Denim's an option. Any type of quilter's cotton, also an option. So let's start without the cat. Okay, so I want to talk to you first a little bit about how to lay out your pattern. If you are doing these in bulk, like I am currently servicing a hospital, so when you see this cut out, this won't be the fabric that we use for this tutorial. I'm just showing you how I would lay it out. So what I've discovered, usually starting from the top, if you take each pattern piece, don't try to cut it out like, in bulk. If you're just at home, like doing it for yourself, that's fine. But if you're doing bulk, the best thing to do is that these lines on the pattern pieces represent what's called a grain line. So a fabric is woven straight across. So you want to respect that grain line for lay in your garment. So what I found effective is that if you take each piece and you take a chalk, you can use whatever you want. You can use a marker or whatever you're using for your fabric. An industrial practice is to cut multiple of the same type of piece at the same time to reduce the amount of just waste of your fabric. So if you trace these all out in multiple layers and then layer your fabric, as you can see, you're respecting your grain line, but you're not going to have any waste, whereas if you were to bulk cut, and similarly so if you went with this piece and you just went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right across and layered it, and then I just pinned the whole thing and then I cut it out like that. But what we'll be using is, I had prepared a lot of 100 earlier for a hospital I'm sewing for, so we'll use those for putting it together. So what you end up with, like I was saying, this is the fabric we'll use for our design. I cut these out earlier for mine. So that's your A. And I find it helpful too when you're designing is that if you go and just respect your pattern pieces, just so that you know kind of your order. A, B, that's what the B. And this one's the C, and this one's the D. So it can be helpful just to lay them out because you can envision what you're making. So basically this sews to this, this sews to this, this sews to this, and this joins on this thing. You can use a sewing machine, you can use a serger. I'm going to use a serger because that's what I personally prefer. So I'm just going to go ahead and assemble this. All right, so at this point, pretty straightforward. So what you're going to do is you've had your A pieces, they're here. So you've sewn these to here. It doesn't matter if you're using a sewing machine, needle and thread, etc. It's going to look the same. I just happen to have a serger, so that's what I'm using. So you would have your B piece here. C is kicking around here somewhere. Anyway, C would be here. And in the pattern, this will be modified in the actual final pattern, but this would be your D. So you have a couple of options here. You could go D, left and right, and have your closure in the back. My particular hospital has requested that we have a side closure, so I've just folded this over here so that the mask is going to close on the side. Okay, so what we have here is I have attached pattern pieces. So if you look at the original pattern, you have A, B, C, D. This will look a little bit different than the earlier picture, just I've decided to shorten it. So what you have is basically you stack them, you sew them that way. So in my case, my folks ask for a side closing mask. If you want your Velcro in the back, you would attach this specific piece over here. Mine asks to be able to take it off on the side. So basically for each pattern piece you have cut 4, and so you're just duplicating that, you're just mirroring it, so you have 2. So your next steps will be to just literally take them like this, and you're going to stitch along the top. You're going to triple fold a pipe cleaner to fit to the nose piece. If you're using a serger, you can just wedge it in the seam. If you're using a sewing machine, you're going to want to either fold that down after you sew it here, and just fold it down and stick it in the seam, and that would be good enough for that. So yeah, on to the next step. All right, so we've gone ahead and we've attached the top to the bottom. So that's what you have inside. Okay, so your other option, instead of using a pipe cleaner, if you're using just like a regular sewing machine, I do find triple folding a pipe cleaner to be really useful, and you can actually just attach it and sew it right into your seam. If you're using a serger, that's a little difficult because obviously you don't get much of a seam there. And what I found just as good is if you take a just a paper clip and you fold it there in half. Well, in this case, I'll just leave it straight. And all I just did was feed it to the seam. That's the stitching. And you can just feed it right into the seam. This doesn't have to be an exact science. Just feed it in. Stretch it out. And it'll hold. And so what you get is on the other side, you just bend that to a nose shape, and the user will make that fit the nose properly. It's just basically to hold it there. I mean, if you can tack the ends, that would probably be good with this machine, but do what works best for your market and your needs and your volume. So what you're gonna do next is whatever you have, whatever you're using, just flip this around, and you're gonna wanna stitch along this bottom portion, just along here. So I've stitched it apart. As you can see, I've stitched it together. As you can see, it's left to right. So yeah, pretty straightforward. Just flip it around. So when you're doing this, the next step, I'm going to use Velcro this example, but there's a lot of options on what you can use for a closure depending on what you have at home. I mean, you can use buttonholes, you can use elastic, you can use ties. Work with what you have. In our case, I was able to source a large volume of Velcro, so that's the type of closure I will be using. But just be creative with what you have available to you. So this is your finished mask, basically. So what you'll do, in my case, I will be using a Velcro. So I will make a piece that goes on the end here, and that's adjustable. And in my case, it will attach over here to the side. So this will create a side mask, just like that. So, there. Okay, so the final step is about your closure. So in my case, I use a Velcro closure, looks like that, and it stitches on, and so you can do it like just an assembly like this. I just went to my local dollar store and I found things like these kids craft kits for $2, and they have clips. You can use those to stitch in, to clip 1 or 2 clips. You can use elastic if you have nothing else. You can repurpose a shoelace, stitch it inside and tie. Whatever it is that you however you need to close it. I'm getting a little bit of traction for the dramatic appearance of some of my masks. So I just wanted to show what these are. They're just basically in bows that I've been making. And I have them on an alligator clip. And just because of sanitation, I'm just clipping them literally onto the side of a mask and just stylizing as needed. If you wanted to make one of these, it's really straightforward. Just take a ribbon. I went to the dollar store. These are literally $2 for 250 meters. It can be really effective for children, trying to get them to wear the masks. And literally, you're just taking your ribbon and you're just making bows. Or however you want the bow. I guess in this case, you can just go back and forth. And so you can just take a bow and then take whatever gross grain ribbon you have around and tie it. I know this is a pretty terrible example, but anyway, tie it, fluff it out, secure it, attach an alligator clip to it. You can get pretty creative with them. I've made some unicorns. Just do whatever works for your family, whatever gets people to wear the masks. And if you have any questions, my contact info's in the bio. Please don't sell my patterns. They're free to use for any non-commercial use. Thanks.